and welcome back to my Skillshare project series. In today's video, I am going to program the user profile updating process. In the previous video, I have already designed the responsive profile page, but today we are going to make it fully functional. We will load user from database, dynamically load cities using AJAX, submit the form using fetch API, send and receive JSON, update multiple related tables, handle validations, and update session data, and then finally return structured JSON responses. So this video is more backend and JavaScript logic focused. So let's get started. Now, as you can see, I have updated my tables in the MySQL workbench. So I have newly added the gender table, the address table, the city table, and the country table. Also, I have updated my user profile table. Here I have added the avatar URL, data type long text, and then I have added the bio, the mobile, and here I have given the relationship to many. Here I have added the relationship with the address and the user profile one to many, and from the city to address one to many, and country to city one to many. First we will start with the header.php file. Here I have added a variable user ID. So it means if the user is not logged in, we can run the auth check PHP and check whether the user is logged in or not. So here I have added a session for the user ID and then used it in the user profile.php file. So this means it prevents unauthorized users from accessing profile pages. Okay, now we will move on to the user profile.php file. First, here we will fetch the user's data. Here in a prepared statement, we have searched the user result from the user table. So in a prepared statement, we have used I means integer, user ID, then user ID is bounded safely, so this prevents the SQL injection, and below that we have assigned to the variable user the user result. So here this means if the user exists, then fetch as associative array, otherwise set it to null. And next we will fetch the profile data with joins from the user profile table. So here we have used left join because if the profile is partially filled, we still want user data, so this provides break in the page. And then we will load all the genders from the gender table and store it in an array, and later we will use the same logic to fetch all the countries from the country table and also keep it as an array using the variable country. Below that we will load the cities based on the selected country. So this means that if the selected country ID and then the city's result will be selected using the ID name from the city table. Here we use the integer and bounded by selected country ID. So this means when the page loads, it loads cities only for the selected ID. So for example, if you choose Sri Lanka, you will get all the cities based on that country. And below that, here I'm deciding which profile image should be displayed. So first I will check whether the profile variable exists and whether it contains a value for avatar URL, and then if both conditions are true, that means the user has already uploaded a profile picture, so I use that image path. And then if not, I will use a default image access image avatar.jpg. So this is called a ternary operator, which is a shorter way of writing if-else statement. So in a conclusion, it means that if the user uploaded a profile, show it. If not, then show the default avatar message. And then below that, we will get the profile message from the URL. So here I'm checking whether if there is a message passed to the URL. So if the message exists in the URL, I store it in the profile message variable. So if it does not exist, I store an empty string. Again, I use a ternary operator over here to safely avoid undefined indexed errors. So this message is usually used to show success or error notifications after updating the profile. So basically, if there is a message, then display it. If not, then don't show anything. Okay, now I will move on to the success error message section. So here I am checking if the profile message contains a value inside a PHP scriptlet. So this means that before using the profile message variable, I have asked if there is a message in the URL, this condition becomes true. If there are no message, then this whole alert box will not appear. So basically, only show the alert box when there is a message, otherwise don't render any. So this keeps the design clean. And below that, inside a div, I have a alert box styling. So here I have given the ID alert box, and then in the class margin bottom 6, padding 4, and rounded LG, so a subtool corners. And then again in a PHP scriptlet, I have said echo string false profile message success, that is assigned to false. So this means that I am using string false to check whether the word success exists inside the message. So what does this string false means? It means that it searches for a word inside a string. If it finds it, it returns the position. If it doesn't, it returns false. And then I have added the styling for the message inside it. So that means here I'm checking if the message contains the word success, then use the green styling over here, and then otherwise use the red styling. So the background color and the border change dynamically. If success, it shows the BG green 50 and the border green 200. If not, it shows a message, error message BG red 50, border red 200. So this makes the alert more visually cleaner to the user. And then inside the paragraph, I have given inside the class PHP scriptlet echo the string position profile message success. So this means here I repeat the same condition, but this time for the text color. So if it is success, then dark green text. So it means that here if it is success, then dark green text. If it's an error, then show dark red text. This keeps the color consistent with the alert background. And next we will again echo the profile message inside a PHP scriptlet. So this means it prints the actual message inside the paragraph. For example, if the profile is updated successfully, then we will close the condition with an endif inside a scriptlet, PHP scriptlet. So here it means that it ends the conditional block. So if there was no message, then none of this HTML gets rendered. And then here we have used the inside a form, the ID profile form, and the class space y8. So here it means that it is used in the JavaScript to handle the AJAX submission, and so here this means that it adds vertical spacing between all direct child elements inside the form. So instead of manually adding margin to each section, Tailwind automatically adds consistent spacing. Okay, now as we have already taken the data from the queries, here inside a scriptlet, PHP scriptlet, I will echo the variable avatar URL so that I can echo the location of the image, and then here in the choose photo also I have echoed the avatar URL so that I can add my photo inside that. And then in the basic information for the first name also I have echoed my first name from the user table. The same goes for the last name, the email, and then for the bio. And now here in the gender drop down, I have first added a scriptlet, a PHP scriptlet. So inside the option value I have, so over here in the PHP scriptlet I have added a for each. Inside that the variable genders as gender. So here the variable genders is an array fetched from the database, and so example, this means that this runs once for each gender record, then it will create each option dynamically. So here inside the option value I have given to echo the gender ID. So here it means that the value of each option is the gender ID from the database. So this is important because we store the gender ID as a foreign key in the profile table. In the next part we have echoed that we will check if the profile exists, then we will check whether the user's data is saved, and then we will check if it is equal to the current gender, the gender ID in the loop. So if both are true, then add selected attribute. If not, add nothing. So then what happens, it means that when the page loads, the user's previously saved data, saved gender is automatically selected and they don't have to reselect it. And then finally I have said to echo the gender name. This means that we can print the gender name, whether it is a male or a female, inside the drop down. And then finally in a PHP scriptlet I have added end for each, so this means it ends the for each loop. Okay, now we will fetch the data for the mobile input field. So inside a PHP scriptlet we have echoed the variable profile, in a ternary operator. So this means if the variable profile exists, then insert the user's saved mobile number. If it does not exist, then keep the field empty. So when the user opens their profile page, if they already saved a number, it appears automatically. If not, the input remains blank. So this means it improves the user's experience because users don't need to retype existing data. And here we have added a pattern 0 to 9 and 10. So here this means it is HTML validations. Inside this brackets 0 to 9, it means only digits allowed from 0 to 9, and in other curly brackets 10 means that it can only be exactly 10 digits and no letters and no special characters. If the user types something invalid, the browser will prevent submission automatically. So this is a client-side validation before the data even reaches the PHP. And below that we will fetch the data for the address. Now here we will add a PHP scriptlet and echo the variable profile to check whether the user have already filled the street address and saved it. If not, then leave it empty. And same goes for the address line too. Now we will get the data for the country. So here it means that inside the option we have given the value 0. So this means that no valid country is selected. So this is useful for validation. You can check if the country is 0 and show an error, and then inside a PHP scriptlet we have the for each condition. So this means that here the variable countries is an array that is fetched from the database. This means that it will run it as a loop for each country. Next we will fetch the country ID. So this means the value is the country ID from the database. Here we will store this ID as a foreign key in the address table. And next we will auto select the previously saved country. So this is the most important part. It checks whether the profile exists, and then is the saved country ID is equal to the current country's ID. If yes, it will add the selected attribute. If no, then it will add nothing. So when the page loads, the user saved country is automatically selected. This prints the country name inside the drop down. Okay, now here we will get the data same as for the country option. So here first we will get the placeholder option value 0. So this means no valid city is selected, useful for validation. And then we will loop through the cities. So here the variable cities is an array fetched from the database, and this loop runs for each and every city, and then we will create each option dynamically. So here we will get the user city ID from the database. Then we will store it as an foreign key in the address table. Then we will auto select the previously saved city. So this means that if the city is already selected, then add the selected attribute. If no, then add nothing. So when the page loads, the user saved city is automatically selected. And finally it prints the city name inside the drop down. Okay, now in the form action, here here in the cancel button I have added a PHP scriptlet. If the user click on it, check the user's role. If the user is a buyer, then take the buyer to the buyer dashboard.php file, and if the user is a seller, then take to the seller dashboard.php file. And now we have added a script before the footer.php file. So here first we select the required elements for the avatar file upload preview. So first we have the avatar file, the file input field, then the avatar preview, the image tag that shows the preview, then the avatar URL input, which is a hidden input to store base64 image data. Then here we will change the event listener. So this means this runs when the user selects a file, and after that this constant file means equal to e.target.files inside bracket 0. So this means that the file 0 part means that the first selected files. Then we have inside if the file reader AIP. So if a file exists, then the file reader is built in a browser object that reads files. So this converts the image into a base64 string. So when the reading is complete, the image preview changes instantly. The base64 string is stored in the hidden input and no page refresh is required. This improves user experience. And next we will change the country change event and load cities. So here we will handle the dependent drop-down logic. First we will get the variables country select and city select. So constant means that this is a variable that cannot be changed, which is permanent. So here we will target both drop downs and then change the event at event listener. This runs when the user selects a country. So when we get the constant country ID, this means when we select the country ID, and if no country ID is selected, then the country is empty, and then we set the city drop down and stop the execution. And then we will fetch the AIP request. Here we send a post request to the backend. Then we pass the country ID and the selected ID. Then we will handle the response with JSON. So this means this converts the backend JSON into JavaScript object. So here we will dynamically create option elements. So this is Ajax in action, no page reload, drop down updates instantly. And then finally we have the form submission using Ajax. Here we will handle the profile form submission. So here we have the variable constant variable profile form. So this profile form has a event listener. So when the user clicks on submit, this stops normal page reload submission. And here we will collect the form data. The form data automatically collects the text input, select fields and the files. and when the button is clicked, this disables the button, changes the text, prevents double submission. So this is very convenient. Next we will send the AJAX request. Here we will send the data to the backend. No headers needed here because form data automatically sets them, and then we will handle the response by using JSON. And now we will handle the response. Here the backend returns adjacent, so if the data is success, then it will send a success message, profile updated successfully, and then we will be redirected and pass the message in the URL. If it's an error, then here it shows the error message, error updating profile. And then we will next catch the block, the error handling. So here this means this handles the network errors, server crashes, adjacent parsing errors. So this is very important for production in apps. And then below that we have a auto hide alert message. Here we have the constant variable alert box. So this means if the variable alert box disappears automatically after 5 seconds. So this keeps the design clean and very professional. Now we will move on to the getCities.php file, the backend for dynamic city loading. So this file is called when the user selects a country. It does not display HTML, it only returns adjacent data. And then first we have the header content type application adjacent. So this means that it tells the browser the response is from this file is adjacent, not HTML. So this is very important because the JavaScript uses response.adjacent. So the browser must know the response format. And then here we will include the database connection, and below that we will send a request if request. So here we will check if the request contains a country ID, and then do you remember in the JavaScript we sent body country ID plus country ID. So here we will confirm that value exists before processing. So this prevents undefined index errors. Next we will convert this country ID into an integer for security, because we can prevent SQL injection and ensure correct data type is selected and improve security. So even though we are using prepared statement, this is still a good practice. And below that we will fetch the cities using prepared statement from the city table. So here we will only select the ID and the name, and where the country ID which filters city by selected country. Then order by name means sort it alphabetically, and then I means that it's an integer parameter, and country ID binds the value safely. So this prevents SQL injection and makes the query more secure. And below that we will store the results in an array. Here we create an empty array for the variable cities, and then we will check whether the record exists, loop through each row, convert them to an associative array and push into the variable cities array. Then finally we will return the JSON response, and here we will convert the PHP array into adjacent. So it becomes success true, and then we will get the IDs and the name, and then finally we will return the adjacent response. So here we will convert the PHP array into adjacent, then we will return the adjacent response if it's an failure. If the country ID was not sent, then the success becomes false and the cities becomes empty array. So this prevents front-end errors. Okay, now we will move on to the user profile update process.php file. So this is the main backend logic for profile update. This file acts as a backend IP endpoint. It receives form data using AJAX, validates it, updates relational tables, and returns a structured adjacent response. Now we will set the adjacent response type. So here we have a header content type application adjacent. So this means that this file returns adjacent data, not HTML. And next we will start a session to ensure, because we need logged in status, user ID, and session updates. And next we will include our connection.php file, and then we will have an authentication check. So this prevents unauthorized access. So if someone directly accesses this file without being logged in, then we return success false message unauthorized access, and then we will immediately stop the execution using exit. So this is very important for the security. And then we get a user ID session. So here we will identify which user is updating the file. Then we will collect the form data. Each field is collected safely using ESET. So this prevents undefined index errors. Here we will collect the first name, the last name, the email, the bio, gender ID, mobile, address line 1, address line 2, the city ID, and the avatar URL. So all these come from the AJAX form submission. So we will collect all these fields and validate them. So this is a server-side validation. So even though we have the front-end validation, the back-end validation is mandatory. So for example, the first name is required. So if this is empty, it returns the adjacent error. And then we will have the validation for the first name, the last name, the email. So this filter validate email, check proper email format, and then it will check the email length, and the same for the bio. Here the bio is limited to 500 characters, and then here we will use regular expression. So this ensures it has exactly 10 digits. Then we will validate the address line. So here it ensures if the address line 1 is filled, then the city is selected. If validation fails, then we will return adjacent, the status is false, and the message error message, and stop the execution. And now we will move on to the main update. So here we will get the database logic, and here we will wrap everything inside try and catch exception. So this ensures proper error handling. First we will update the basic user table. So here we will update the first name and the last name. Here we used prepared statement SSI, which means string integer, and then if this update fails, then it throws an exception, fail to update user information. And next we will get the current user profile if it exists. So here it means it checks if a profile already exists. So here, if yes, then we will update the existing address, and then we will insert a new address, and then get the inserted ID. So this gives the newly created address ID. After that we will update the existing profile. So now the update profile table will be like update user profile, set avatar URL, bio, gender ID, mobile address ID, where the user ID. So here this means it keeps the relational consistency, and if the profile does not exist, then the user profile record does not exist. So we create everything from scratch. And first we will insert the address if needed. So if the fields are filled, then we will insert the new address, and then we will store the inserted ID. And then in the second step we will insert the new user profile. So here we will get the profile record if it's created. And finally we will update the session variables. So after a successful update, this ensures that the navbar updates immediately, no need to re-log in. And then we will return the success adjacent, echo adjacent encode success true, message profile updated successfully. The front end receives this and redirects it. And then finally, if anything fails, it catches exception, the variable e. So then we will return the message success false, message error message. So this keeps error handling structured. Okay, as you can see, if a user is logged in and the user will go to their my profile page, you can see that you can update your profile. So here first I will choose a profile picture. So for that I will select this and click on open, and you can see that my profile picture is selected. Then in the basic information area you can see that you can enter your first name, the last name, but the email address is only readable. You can't insert any email address over here. And below that you have the profile information. So here you can insert any data over here. So after that you can select your gender and then insert your mobile number, which will be only 10 digits. And below that you have the address information, the address line 1 and the address line 2, and below that side by side we have the country and the city drop downs. So first here I have selected Sri Lanka and I have selected. So here you can see that when I click on the country, if here's select country, then here will be also select country. If you select on a country, then only you can select a city according to that country. So here I have selected Colombo, and now I will click on Save Changes. So now you can see that I will get a message, profile updated successfully, and it will be gone within the duration of 5 seconds. And now if I select on cancel, you can see that it takes me to the seller dashboard.php file. So that's how we program the complete user profile updating process in our Skillshop project. In this task, we connected front-end and back-end using Ajax and JSON. We handled relational database that updates properly. We implemented validation and session management correctly. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.